This is a quick how-to video showing you how to clean and oil your RC brushed motor. I'm going to be showing how to do this with my Traxxas XL5 Bandit, which does have a brushed motor. Unlike brushless motors, it is highly recommended that you clean your motor at least once a month. This will extend the lifespan of the motor and save you money in the end. One thing that you shouldn't use on your motor is WD-40. It's not meant for it and could shorten its lifespan. There's two things that you're going to need in order to pull this off. First of all, you're going to need a cleaner for your motor. I chose Dynamite Magnum Force 2. It comes highly recommended by a lot of RC hobbyists out there. Just be sure to read the directions and be very cautious about the warnings. Don't get it on your skin, don't breathe it in, don't get it in your eyes. Do not use it near an open flame or any kind of electrical source. Also, you're going to need oil for the bushings on the motor. I'm just choosing Zoom Spout oiler since it works for a lot of things, including RC. However, there are companies out there that make oil that's specifically made for the bushings on the motor. I'm going to go ahead and show the steps of me removing the motor from my Bandit. This works also with the Slash, Stampede, and Rustler. However, only for the two-wheel drive. If you have another RC, then click this link right now and it will take you straight to the cleaning. The first step is to remove the gear cover from the transmission. You're going to want to take off this screw and that one down there. If you can't reach the lower screw due to the tire, you will have to remove the 4mm nut which holds the tire on, which will give you access to that screw. With those screws removed, you can now take off the gear cover and have access to the motor and the pinion gear. What you're going to want to do next is take these two screws completely off. With those two screws undone, you can now pull the motor completely out. If you put on a bigger pinion gear, you are going to have to take that off because it will not fit through that hole when you pull the motor through. Next, you're going to want to disconnect the motor from the ESC. You'll see that there is two wires, one black, one red, or white and blue, that leads from the motor to the ESC. Along that wire, you're going to find this clear part. What you're going to want to do is grab the base of each side and pull apart. Do that for each side. Make sure that you are grabbing the base, otherwise you'll be pulling on one side and it will not come apart. The motor that comes with the Traxxas XL5 series is a brushed 12-turn Titan motor. However, I don't have that motor anymore. I have a Duratrax Photon Speed 2, which is a 20-turn. This motor, I would have to say, is not too much better than the Titan 12T, but it is more reliable. With your brush motor removed, you can now go ahead and clean it. I highly suggest that you put the pinion gear back on or keep it on. This will allow you to easily turn the shaft inside the motor. That way the cleaner and the lube can reach areas that it naturally wouldn't. As you can see, I'm just using a basic grocery bag just to hold the motor. I just don't want to get it all over my skin. But it is highly advised that you go ahead, hold it by the wires, get your spray, and spray it into every single hole that you can find on your motor. So, let's get this done. And this is why you want to leave the pinion gear on there. Makes it much easier to turn. Turn a few times and give it some more sprays. And you really want to keep spraying it until it starts dripping clear. And that's it. The motor has now been cleaned out. The liquid that was coming out of the motor at this point is now clear, which is exactly what you want it to be like. Now it's time to move on to oiling up the bushings. For oiling the bushings, I highly recommend more paper towels. So what you're going to want to do is get your oil and put it on the very top part of where the shaft comes out. Just right there. And then with the pinion gear on, just start rotating it. This will allow the oil to move into the bushing, giving it the lubrication that it does need. And just spin it for 30 seconds to a minute. Let that oil really get in there. After rotating the bar, go ahead and wipe away the extra oil. Now it's time to do the other side. Now, depending on the spout you're using for the oil, you might have to take off the pinion gear, or at least loosen it to the point where you can pull it out further away. And now it's the same process. Just spray the oil on where the shaft goes in to the bushing. Once you got enough in there, just start rotating it. And you should notice at this point that it's much easier to turn the shaft. In fact, it will become a breeze. But once again, rotate it back and forth, 30 seconds to about a minute. Just like with the other side, wipe away the spare oil. And your brush motor has been cleaned and re-oiled. Now, it's time to go ahead and reinstall it and get back to racing. And now for the process to show you how to reattach your motor to your two-wheel drive Bandit / Stampede or Rustler. So, you're going to want to go ahead and plug these wires back together. Red to white or red to red, black to blue or black to black. With your motor reconnected, go ahead and slide it back in and make sure that the pinion gear goes right through that hole. Next, you're going to want to go ahead and straighten out the holes. That way you can put the screws back in. Make sure that you do not tighten those screws all the way down yet, but they are tight enough to hold the motor all the way in. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to straighten out your pinion gear so it's perfectly aligned with your spur gear. Now that the pinion gear has been realigned, you're going to want to get a small strip of paper and put it in between the two gears. Now you're going to want to push the pinion into the spur gear as hard as you can. Now is the time to retighten those screws all the way. With those two screws completely tightened together, pull out the piece of paper and you should have the right spacing that is needed for your spur and pinion gear to be apart. With that all taken care of, you can now reattach the gear cover, which should lay completely flat. Now, with the two screws that hold it in, you'll notice that they're different sizes. There's one that is smaller than the other. The smaller screw gets attached to the bottom, and the bigger screw goes on top. With the motor reinstalled, feel free to test it out. If the motor doesn't work, make sure that the connectors are completely pushed together. And that is how you clean the brush motor for your RC vehicle. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. Other than that, there's nothing more to say.